for the last 30 years, I really have had no idea who I am other than being a mother.
Hello, beautiful. Welcome back to the Trauma Mamas podcast. This is personal trainer and wellness coach Kelly Coffey. I am here with the beautiful, the charitable author and creator of the Trauma-Informed Mind-Body Timbo program, Sue Jones. Everybody welcome Sue Jones. I'm feeling deep gratitude and privilege because I actually got an email last night from a woman who came to my free masterclass, and she sent me the most delightful note afterwards to say that she could see my genuineness and my authenticity and my passion. And you know, people don't tend to say anything unless they want to complain or they ate some seafood and they got sick. So like getting a sweet, meaningful email from a stranger, it just totally made my whole week. So is there anything in your life that you would leave positive feedback about this week?
I know you're thinking of something.
What could I be thinking of?
Well, listener, I was just telling Kelly that I had the opportunity to try out a new vibrator that my wife bought me. It is the only vibrator that Dr. Ruth recommends, little Dr. Ruth. It's called like the Eroscillator 2000 or something like that.
Eroscillator?
I have to say, traditionally, because of all the trauma and stuff I've had, I've been a pretty, let's say, conservative when it comes to that kind of thing. But my wife decided to buy this, and I was very hesitant to try it out because it looks a little bit medieval. I did finally give it a test run, and I have to say, like, I think my life has changed forever.
I'd like to mention, P.S., that we are not sponsored by the Eroscillator. We are not being paid to promote this in any way. This is a real review from a real woman.
The thing is, it's an actual appliance. Like you have to plug it into the wall.
It's like the magic wand.
Yes,
you know what the magic wand is, right?
Well, I know, but I think I could categorize this as a magic wand.
No. Okay. It is like a kitchen appliance almost. I mean, you could use it in the kitchen, no reason not to. And you have to plug it into the wall because it has so much power that it needs a direct line to electricity.
It looks to me like it's called the Hitachi magic wand.
That is what it's called. Indeed. It was on my wedding registry. That's a true story.
You know, by the way, I have been woefully uneducated about female anatomy. And I did not know that the clitoris is like gigantic. Like it's like a huge like network of nerves that you don't see.
Dude, we could talk about this all freaking day.
I was married to a man who like could give two shits about female anatomy and women's pleasure. So now that I'm married to a woman, I'm just learning so much.
Oh, there's so many things I could say right now, Sue. I don't even know which one to choose. The idea that heterosexual intercourse could ever or would ever be as pleasurable for a female as it is for a male is fucking ridiculous.
Well, maybe we should dedicate an entire episode just to educating our female listeners about their own sexual anatomy.
If people were into that and thought that that was important, given that we're supposed to be talking about trauma, that might be a little weird, but like, I'm super happy to do that.
Here's how it relates to trauma. I have tons of sexual trauma. And so when I met and married my wife, I didn't want to have any connection to my body whatsoever, any connection to my female sexual anatomy whatsoever. I wouldn't look at my sexual anatomy. I wouldn't touch it. Like I was so disconnected from it because of all the trauma I had. And it's not a fast road back to reconnecting to your body, but the Eroscillator sure helps. This is a whole episode, and we should think about it.
If you're listening, let us know if you'd like to hear us talk about this. I have a lot to say on the topic.
Well, we have a guest, and I would like to just bring her right on in. Her name is Mel. Mel, welcome to the Trauma Mamas.
Hi, ladies. Thank you so much for inviting me for what I am sure is going to be a lovely conversation because it has been so far. It has absolutely made my day. And
Now Sue's going to have to include all the vibrator
Oh, yeah.
talk so that all of that makes sense.
if you guys do decide to do a podcast around the clitoris or sex toys, I want to be invited to that also.
All right. So, Mel, can you please tell us a little bit about you? Who are you, Mel?
Boy, who I am. I don't know that I can even answer that, to be honest with you. For the past 28 years, I've been a mom. For as long as I can remember, that is the only thing I ever wanted. And so I never thought of my identity outside of that. At the beginning of March, my last child moved out of the house. So my life no longer revolved around my children. I lost very much who I was. For the last 30 years, I really have had no idea who I am other than being a mother. And even then, I wasn't the mother that I had envisioned. I wasn't the mother that I wanted to be. And so here I am in a place of getting to rediscover who I am and how I want to be.
What is a moment that you have experienced recently that made you uncomfortable enough to think, I need some help with this?
So in January, I was in London visiting my oldest, and I noticed I did a lot of sitting around waiting. Also, my son informed us that he was applying to a transfer to Germany. Also, my husband and I were emotionally struggling. And I had had some conversations with my oldest, and she said, sounds like it's very lonely. And I said, well, I've been lonely all of my life. And it was a combination of all of those that made me realize that I wasn't being me. And I started to cry because it just felt like I was grieving. And because my upbringing was the way it was, that person had been buried out of necessity. And I never knew it.
It sounds like you don't know who you are. And maybe there isn't any sense of ground beneath your feet because of that. Does that sound accurate?
Completely. And it makes me feel the way I felt when I was a young child. You know, as a kid, you're trying to figure out who you are and what's important to you and the things you like. But me trying to figure that out as a child was dangerous.
Mel, can you tell me about your relationship with your mother?
So my relationship with my mom, I couldn't do the right thing ever. I was always doing the wrong thing. That's all I knew. Other than that, I thought we had a typical relationship. As a teenager, we never got along. But again, I thought that was normal. Even though she had attempted killing herself a couple of times, one of the times that my mother tried to kill herself, she was admitted. And they diagnosed her with borderline personality disorder, narcissistic personality disorder. When you have a mother with borderline personality disorder, you will never have a typical relationship with a mother. It's never going to happen. I went through therapy and read several books, and I tried setting boundaries, and it was as to be expected. And then I had said to my husband, I said, I think I need to cut things off with my mom. I hugged my mother and told her I loved her. And that was the last time I saw her. And then almost 2 years later, I got a call from an attorney that my mother had passed, and they believed it to be a suicide. And I said, it absolutely was a suicide. There's no question. I don't need to know any information, because she had attempted to kill herself at least 5 times in the previous 10 years.
So, Mel, there's now time and space for old, unresolved traumas and healing to come to the surface. My sense is that's what's happening for you right now, indicated by the fact that there's this feeling of, I don't know who I am. I don't feel like I have ground under my feet. I know that the real me is in there somewhere. All of that trauma that's just been laying in wait is like, all right, well, thanks for giving us some room now. Here we are.
I think it's not even just the time. It was the realization that I hadn't finished processing it.
So when our kids leave home, then they decide what kind of relationship they want to have with us. It's no longer up to us. And very often, what they decide is not what we would really want. And so it can touch into those feelings of being left, not having what you really crave, not having that relationship. And we have that feeling of almost like desperation, like, I just want to have more of a relationship with you. And where are you? And why aren't you calling me back? And why aren't you texting me back? And why don't you want to come home to visit as often as I want you to come home to visit? It really pokes at that wound.
I mean, the way you worded it, they decide what they want out of your relationship. Just the thought of that is scary as all hell, because that leaves me in a very unsafe, unstable place, because they get to decide. I don't. If who I am is not a mother, then who am I?
You said you've lost your stability. That's never your kid's job. You are the mother. You are the one that is supposed to provide the stability. Our job as parents is to usher them out of the nest and into an independent life. And that doesn't mean you don't have a relationship with your children, but that relationship is going to change because now they're having their adult lives. So you're not a priority to them. This little space that we just identified, I think is going to be really important for you.
The reason why I wanted children is because I wanted to experience unconditional love. You can't look for your kids for unconditional love, and you can't look to them for providing you safety and stability and an identity. The one and only thing I ever cared about being a mother, I screwed up beyond all belief because I did the opposite of what I needed to do or what I should have done. And now they're all grown. I can't take it back. All I can really do is figure out how to actually be that mother.
I think that you can do that once you, this kind of sounds hokey, once you learn to re-mother yourself. We could talk about your kids all day, but where you're really going to make some headway is if we understand how you work. Back in the very beginning, you said, all I've ever wanted all my life is to be a mother. And I immediately flagged that in my head because there's a reason that a young girl would focus on that. What place in you do you think that thought or idea was going to fill?
I guess it was being able to accept me for who I was. Nothing about me was accepted.
By your own mother.
Yeah. And then eventually by myself. Throughout most of my teens and even most of my 20s, I was a cold-hearted bitch. I didn't care about anybody because that was the safe way to be. And that is the complete opposite of who I am inside.
Did you imagine that any children that you might have would accept you completely as you were?
I guess I expected them to. In reality, they don't have a choice when they're younger.
And they don't know anything else, which also helps.
And then I realized when my oldest was, I want to say somewhere between 10th and 11th grade, and she and I had a conversation. And that was the first time that I realized that I was at risk of losing that unconditional love.
From as far back as you can remember, you had a strategy. You were like, I'm going to have kids and they will unconditionally love me and I will feel whole. Finally, that worked for a while, probably till they became teenagers. And then it started getting shitty because teenagers' job is to actually hate their parents. And now they're gone. All of the outside sources of your quote unquote wholeness are gone. It is now time to find inside things that can provide that wholeness, because you can spend your entire life looking outside of you for a feeling of wholeness. But that pain and that emptiness or that sense of feeling lost will always be there unless you get a dog. You can get a dog. They'll love you unconditionally.
Or two, if you're Kelly Coffee and really need the love.
I mean, even with a dog, that feeling inside of you of not being okay, not being acceptable, not being good enough, it's always going to be there until we poke around in there and then stitch it up. If you were to think as far back as you possibly could into your childhood and think of the first moment where you really felt like you just weren't right, there's just something about you that was just wrong, what would that memory be?
It was my birthday and my parents had gotten me a bike. I walked out, looked at the bike, and was just kind of like, oh, cool. Yay. Thank you. I acknowledged that I liked it to a certain degree. She yanked me back into the room and scolded me for being ungrateful, being rude. And I was the worst daughter in the world.
And when you think of that memory, what do you feel in your body?
A heaviness in my chest and heart and stomach.
And is that feeling similar to the feeling you have about your kids being gone? And
yeah.
So we can put together this experience that you had in this early life, which is your first experience of feeling like I'm just not a good daughter. And these feelings that you're having now that your kids are gone, which maybe would translate to I'm just not a good mother. Neither of those statements are true. But your mother had a specific way that she wanted you to react to the bike so that she could feel good inside herself. And I'm not saying that you're your mother at all, and you didn't treat your kids the way your mother treated you at all. But there is a parallel there. I want my kids to be engaging me so that I can feel good inside. As a mother, you can make all kinds of meaning around how your kids are engaging with you. But the fact of the matter is, your relationship with your children has changed, and it's going to change again. And it's going to change again. It's going to change when they get married. It's going to change when they have kids. When they have their first devastating, life-altering, crying on the floor, rock bottom moment, they're going to come to you. Our jobs as mothers is no longer to kiss boo-boos and to tuck into bed. It's to be there when they need you. And then they're not going to need you every single day. But when they need you, you're going to be there. And each time that happens, your relationship is going to strengthen and strengthen. But it's important for you to really do the work of recognizing when those feelings of, I need something from my children to make me feel good inside, come up in you, because that goes all the way back to not having this mother that you wanted to have, a mother who also wanted very specific things from you so that she could feel good inside.
Mel, I'm listening to you talk, and I'm thinking about all the different ways that we try to create meaning for ourselves and define ourselves and give ourselves a sense of purpose and identity. Becoming mothers is a really easy default one. In theory, we know how to prioritize our lives around that structure. I didn't always want to be a mother, but once that started happening for me, life felt real mapped out, real clear. And isn't that delightful to suddenly be so certain and have everything be so clear? We don't, all of us obviously, pick motherhood as that clarifying and defining life feature. Some of us pick careers. Some of us pick relationships. If I am married to this man, then I will be a wife, and I know what to do as a wife, and I have clarity, and I have purpose, and I have meaning, and I don't have to be uncomfortable in the not knowing anymore. And then he bangs his 22-year-old receptionist and everything gets turned on its head. The kids grow up and they move, which, by the way, suggests to me that you were, in fact, a good mother. You did well enough to equip them with the bravery and the drive to not live in your basement. So when the husband cheats and leaves, or the kids move out, or the career suddenly is obsolete, or you get fired, or you retire, what do I do now? Cultivating the willingness, first of all, to recognize that discomfort and sit in it, that's the growth moment. That's you having perhaps your first adult experience of figuring out who you genuinely are. Now in adulthood, in your empty nest, you get to write what that looks like. It might be that you need to be quiet so you can decide and choose who Mel is, because all things outside of yourself, career, relationships, all of that stuff changes. But who you are deep inside, that's your one and only constant. I'm not looking forward to being in the moment that you're in when my girls are like, okay, mom, fuck off. We out. But I like to think that the work that Sue and I do together will soften the blow on that moment for me a little bit. We'll see.
As I was listening to Kelly talk, part of what really came to me was just listening to you, Mel, talk about who you were before you were a mother, and then you became a mother, and that helped you feel kind of whole, right? You felt like you had a place where you could really put your energy, and you felt like you were getting that unconditional love. And we do. When our kids are young, we get that unconditional love. It's true. But prior to that, what I heard you say is I was a real bitch because that was the only safe way to be. So you're not a mother. I mean, you are a mother, but it's changed. And you don't want to go back to being that bitch, right? So as a starting point for who Mel is, I want you to recognize that you are inherently worthy of unconditional love and a sense of belonging. Just because you're a human being, because you were born a perfect whole human being. You grew through your relationship with your mother to believe that you were unworthy of that. And if you were unworthy of that, the easy answer was, I'm just going to have some kids because they'll unconditionally love me. And then that will just feel great. And it does. When they're toddlers and, 6, 7, 8 years old, and they think mom is the best, it does feel really good. But kids grow up, and the one thing that has been such a learning curve for me is this recognition that your relationship with your kids and your role as mother is constantly changing. And right now, the best thing that you can do for your kids is to work on yourself, because that is what they need you to model for them. And they need you to be able to put what my mom calls pebbles in their shoe. They call you and they're like, my boss is mean and blah, 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 blah. And you put a pebble in their shoe. Well, you know what? You can actually blame your boss or anything outside of you for all of your discomfort, but there's a way that you can feel strong and confident and healthy and whole inside yourself that has nothing to do with anything outside of yourself. You're saying that because you're doing that work, and they are not going to be like, wow, gee, mom, you're so smart. Thank you so much. But it's a pebble in their shoe that they walk down their path, and eventually they're like, what the hell is that thing in my shoe? And they stop and they take their shoe off and they look at it and they go, oh, that's what that is. That's our role as mothers right now. And you can do that authentically by way of your own self-discovery, starting with the fact that you are recognizing that you became an angry bitch because it was the only way that you felt safe. That's a strong statement. The only way for you to stay safe was to keep everybody away from you, to project this like, whoa, stay away from Mel. And that was your safe place.
Yeah. And even though I loved my kids unconditionally, I still chose to create a certain amount of distance between me and them to stay safe myself. And by doing so, created an unsafe environment for them. And that is one of the things that came up with Timbo.
I wonder what it would have felt like if instead of taking her life, your mother said to you, if I could go back and do it over, I would, and I'm sorry.
It would never happen.
Maybe not, but you can have that conversation with your kids, and it can be healing for them and for you. All kids really want is that their mother or their father would say, you know what? If I could do it over again, I would, and I'm sorry. That's all they want. They can be 65 years old. We don't care that our parents did the best they could with what they had. And that can be a starting point for healing for both you and your kids. And then you really can just focus on what you need to do for you to become healthy and whole, and to recognize that you are a perfect, worthy, beautiful, lovable human being.
If and when apologizing to children, maybe also massage into their, I'm so proud of who you are and what you have become despite everything that happened in the past. You're amazing.
When I came home from Timbo, that was one of the things that I had decided I needed to do, was to apologize.
Your kids are no longer little children. They're adults. So they don't need what little children need. You get to have a different kind of dialogue. You just need to let them know that you are open to that. Have that conversation with them. And your relationship is just going to grow into what it should be, the relationship of adult children with their mom. So thank you so much, Mel, for coming on the show. And we want to hear about how it goes.
I truly appreciate it.
Well, we appreciate you. Oh boy, Kelly, you got some fun times to look forward to.
I can't wait. I'm on the edge of my seat.
It's a grieving process. Those little girls and those little boys are gone.
I'm going to fall into the soft, warm embrace of total clarity of purpose here and go pick up my fucking kids from school. And then when they empty nest on me, I'll freak out, and then I'll call you and it'll be great.
All right. Thank you all for joining us today. Please visit the website, thetraumamamas.com. Subscribe to our podcast so that you get a notice every week and you can listen on your drive to work. Take care. Thanks for tuning in. Bye.